Welcome back, guys. I know it's been a while. We got some good stuff for you today, though. We are back on the mid-engine Chevette. I haven't forgot about you. I haven't forgot about this project. It's just been on the back burner for a little bit. As you can see, we got it up on jack stands at the front of the shop here, and we're starting to take some parts off. If you recall, this car was actually meant to be given to my students. The girls in my grade 10 class last year rock, paper, scissored over this car, and they chose this as their potential race car. And then we started looking a little closer. Yeah, it's pretty ventilated. So we ended up giving them the cream-colored Chevette, and actually that turned out probably really well. So that leaves me with this car, and I've decided to make this to be a mid-engine, eventually all-wheel drive Chevette. We're going for broke. Today, the first thing we need to decide is a game plan on how we're going to get there. A wise man once told me, before you actually build a project car, you need to determine its purpose. It's kind of like us as people. If we don't have a purpose, we struggle. We run into all sorts of problems. Well, my purpose for this car is to be a street car that can do some autocross or short circuit racing. Whenever you're starting a pretty intricate, very intense swap, you have to break it down to the structure of the vehicle. I think there's two camps. On one side, we got tube chassis cars, and I think a lot of people just automatically jump to that. Oh, it's gonna be a crazy swap, we're gonna make it a tube chassis car. On the other side, we have the more traditional frame rail car. And this is the decision that I have to make. Let's go through this right now. First of all, if you make a tube chassis car, I would say you get an A+ for your fabrication skills. When people see that, oh, it's a tube chassis car, they're like, oh yeah, he knows how to weld, that kind of stuff. And I agree, yes. I haven't done a tube chassis car myself before, but I'm not sure if this is the time I want to do one. If you make a frame rail car, like some good old 2x4 HSS, you're gonna get a B-. Next, weight. I think this is a little controversial, but you get a few more points for body stiffness in a tube chassis car. I think in a frame rail car, if you can handle a little more body deflection, or you're just not quite ready to commit to a cage, I think the weight's probably about the same. Honestly, if you think about it, you got one 2x4 going across the bottom versus probably 3 tubes in a tube chassis car. They probably weigh about the same if you were to take like the section weight. Next point, and this one's a pretty big one for me. A tube chassis car, that's mostly track car stuff. Like if you get pulled over by a cop on the side of the road and he sees this jungle of tubes all around you and you're not wearing a helmet, probably more important, if you get into a collision, even a minor collision on the street in a tube chassis car without a helmet, it's not looking too good for you. Frame rail cars, they are street cars, and I kind of want to street drive this thing. That's the whole point of the car. I love driving my cars. I don't have a trailer because I don't want to trailer my cars to the track. That makes me lean this way a little bit here just for the street car part. And yeah, that's the next point. It's a jungle of tubes. There's an open cab and a frame rail design, and that suits me maybe a little bit because I want this mid-engine to be on display. This one was kind of the tipping point for me. It's a long process to make a tube chassis car. Not to say that the frame rail car is a lot quicker, but it is quicker, and I don't want this thing sitting in my shop forever. A lot of tube chassis cars are sitting on an alignment rack somewhere in the back of a C-can for too many years. I want this thing, put together. This whole stage is like, get it rolling. Just get it rolling so I don't have to have this in the front of my garage like a lawn ornament. Last thing I'd say, a tube chassis, it abandons any of the unibody potential that's in your vehicle. A frame rail car can still utilize some of that unibody that is available, I'm gonna say available, to be utilized for structure. I mean, the Chevette, it is a unibody car, so obviously there's some thought in a unibody. Not that I'm going to rely on it a lot, but you can a little bit. Like even look at the G-body cars. If you take a frame off of a G-body, it's kind of like a limp noodle. Like it's not that strong. And so obviously even the G-body cars rely on the body to give it some structure. All of these things considered, I'm going to go with the frame rail. Sorry, you can unsubscribe if you want, but I'm thinking we're gonna just get this thing rolling so we can go have some fun with it. Well, actually, before we even do that, we need to just get the car better. The whole reason this car is here, well, is because it was too rough for my students to work on. So we're gonna fix that first. We're gonna do what I do to all these Chevettes, and we're gonna take a nice filing cabinet and we're gonna recreate this rocker panel. The other thing we're gonna do is start building our frame. And GM gives us a really nice starting point on these cars. The inner rocker panel on a Chevette. It's about 4 feet long, it is totally straight, and it is exactly 4 inches tall from the front all the way to the back. Thanks, GM. I'll forgive you at least one lifter failure for that. But before we start cutting, there's a few measurements. I'm gonna drop a plumb bob, I already did, and I made 3 checkpoints on the car. With those 3 points, if the car were to get bumped or something when you're cutting the diff out or when you're cutting the suspension out, that way we can realign it just so we know exactly where it goes on the floor. And that means I can mark these things on the floor now. I have the center line of the wheel and the wheel mounting surface. This is also a good time to check if the chassis we're starting with is straight. The factory wheelbase of this car is 95 inches. We are like 1/16 big. The other side is like a 32nd big. So we're gonna call ourselves like a 32nd out from factory spec. I think that's pretty good. So now the fun part. Let's start cutting. Fun fact of the day, a Chevette uses the cage of the rear seat kind of like a body stiffener. And if you ever look on a Chevette, you'll see this. From all the body flexing over the years, this little box structure here cracks in all of these spots where the ribs are. Originally, they have a torque box coming along the sides on either side underneath the door, and then they have another box that comes kind of about 8 inches in from the edge on either side. And the only thing that connects the outer boxes to the inner boxes that eventually become the rear subframe is the seat. Now that I have part of the seat removed, you can see this a little better. So here's the B-pillar, and this is the box that kind of goes from the inner rocker panel slash rocker panel that makes a box here. And then here's the beginning of the rear subframe. And there's this gap in between the two. Nothing connects them except for what would be the seat. Autopsy report. Yeah, it's a pretty rusty unit. I would say this car would be too far gone for really anything else. It's probably too far gone for what I want to do with it, but we're gonna bring it back because we can. Right about there. What I'm gonna do next here, I'm gonna get some measurements that are common on both sides so I can make sure I put these pieces in the same spot on both sides. And then I'm gonna start tack welding across the top here. After that, I'm gonna make sure these are plumb to the ground. You'll notice too, I'm only doing one side at a time. So I have that side still all together, but I'm also trying to keep the body as rigid as possible for as long as possible. Once I get this side welded in, I'll go in and do that side over there, and then I'll put some braces between the two and cut the rest of the floor out. And there we have it, the beginning of our frame. I know this may seem a little bit crude just to eyeball it off of this line. We are gonna get a few things right on the dot. Obviously, we're gonna get the wheelbase, the track width, all of those things nailed right in. But is this surface gonna be within 1/1000th of that surface that eventually shows up on that side? Probably not, and that's okay. If you have a regular Chevette, what I normally like to do here, normally I like to just get a piece of like 3/16 flat iron that's 4 inches wide, and you can weld it. This right here is where the body seam should be. And I think this applies to quite a number of cars actually. The inner rocker panel is pretty straight. You can really stiffen up a body that way. All right, keep welding. Assessment time. Still straight. That's how you know it's in there. There's no weather stripping behind it right now, so this should actually be about there when it touches the weather stripping, but it lets it go past right now. So, but if you look at the gap itself, when I hold it there, the door gap is nice and straight, and that's what really matters. No one's gonna take a micrometer to your frame, but they are gonna see your door gap and they might close your door. This brings us to stage 2, which is the rocker panel, or lack thereof. There's a couple real common rust areas on a Chevette. Rocker panels, number 1. Second is the doors delaminating. The door is basically like glued to the inner skin, so yeah, this lower part always hangs out and looks ugly. Right about here is where the welds start, and that's the important part. So I can't even use the door really as my basis for where I'm gonna guide off of, but I'm gonna have this point here and the point at the front of the door. Well, bodywork. It's always worse than you think. So we're gonna have to fix that. You know what though? This is maybe a blessing in disguise. We now have access to all of the space inside of here for now. Like right in there, that's gonna be where the frame keeps going on. So for now, this is just going to give us access. We'll have to, do some welding in here probably anyways. And then we'll cover it up with some nice new sheet metal. Now, a moment of silence for the filing cabinet that's donating its metal to this project. So here's a rough idea of what those measurements look like. In practice, my filing cabinet is not long enough, so I'm gonna have to make this in 2 pieces, but I'm gonna butt weld them together first before I start bending them, so I have like one piece of metal that I start with. Now, unless you have a really nice 6-foot metal brake, you're gonna have to improvise on this part. Making the body lines, what I have here on my bench, I got some big pieces of flat iron that are C-clamped and vice gripped right down to the bench, and I'm sandwiching the piece of metal right where the bend is supposed to be. Then I'm gonna take some sheet metal vice grips and I'm gonna slowly work at this. Yeah, it's not gonna be pretty, it's not gonna be the most beautiful bend to begin with, but if you just slowly work your way up and down the bend so you don't get a big rainbow in the whole thing. There we go. I'm just working my way across this bend, just like so, all the way from one end to the other, slowly bringing this up. First bend's done. Time to do the second bend. This one's a little easier. This is the 3/4 inch fin that's gonna become the body seam, and I just have to bend it 90 degrees down. On this car, there's quite a bit of rust, a little higher than the rocker panel on the back here, so I'm gonna actually add a bit above the rocker panel. That's gonna go into this section right here. Now this part of the body is actually curved, and so I cut all these slits in the back here so that when it comes time to put it on the body, I'll be able to form it to the curve. And well, there we go. We got ourselves a rocker panel. Let's see if it fits. I guess something I haven't mentioned yet, I actually utilized the lip on the filing cabinet right here. I'm gonna cut this down to have a 3/8 lip like so. That lip I'm gonna utilize to hang it right on top of this and do a bit of a lap weld right in here. And that way you're never gonna see the weld. Let's pop this out. And that is hopefully a rocker panel. Now, no promises this works the first time. Well, we are real close. It's actually fitting pretty good. So that's nice. We got it clamped down here to our frame. I'm gonna have to do a little more fold work over here because this gets into the curvature of the body. I've cut up here until I've got to free clear metal. I found if I spaced out the bottom of the body seam 1/8 of an inch with this 1/8 inch piece of flat iron, that it just looked just at just the right angle. So I was maybe about an 1/8 inch out with my micrometer. Taking a bit of a weight penalty, I guess. I added a pound or two with that steel, but it's gonna look a little nicer when it's done. Then the curvature, this all curvature should line up nice. One specialty tool that I do subscribe to is called the punch flange tool. It's a real handy dandy item. And just like that. Yeah, it's got a couple little wrinkles in it, but that's gonna be super nice to burn a nice weld in right in here. And for those of you looking, yes, I see that. We're not looking at that today. That's another day issue. I put a little rust paint on the inside of our frame just to prevent some future corrosion. I drill a fairly large hole. That was a 10mm drill bit, or 3/8, whatever. So that I can fill that hole. The reason is I got really thick metal behind here. So I'm gonna do some little circles right in the center of that to let the metal on the backside heat up that's a lot thicker before the puddle even gets close to the sheet metal. And by the time the puddle touches the sheet metal, at least we had a chance for the back metal to get hot so we don't get a cold lap. Back off the seal. Now, that's where the door really should be, is right there, because that's where, well, the delaminated door would laminate. So if I do that, yeah, it's lined up real nice all the way along the bottom of the door. You tell me, guys, am I making a mistake? Is this the wrong direction for this project? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. That's all for this episode, guys. I gotta do all of those same things just on the other side of the car and probably weld in 20 other random things that you're never gonna see. But until then, go make something. Have some fun with your buddies and go fast. Yeah. That's quite the archaeological dig we got going on underneath of here.